little bit. And welcome everybody to Monster Monday for Monday, November 29th, 2021. I am your host, DM Gallibond, and tonight on Monster Monday, we are looking at none other than Zuggtmoy. Zuggtmoy, who is the Demon Queen of Fungi. She is a horribly powerful ruler from one of the planes of the Abyss. And we're going to talk a little bit about when and how you might use her in a campaign. Talk about areas where she has appeared in other campaigns in both 5th edition and earlier editions of the game, and a little bit more like that. So let's go ahead and get into our show. All right, this lovely artistic rendering. Lovely, okay. Yeah, not so much. This is Zuggtmoy as depicted from 3rd edition in the source book Fiendish Codex 1 Hordes of the Abyss. And Zuggtmoy has been around since 1st edition. There's no artwork from her in 1st edition, at least not that I am aware of. But this is the earliest artwork I could find from 3rd edition. And in 1st edition, she is referenced as in her natural form, she's bulbous. She resembles a puffball mushroom with a toadstool growing on top. 4 elephantine legs with suckered bottoms support the spherical body. So, yeah, clearly, I mean, that's in her natural form. That's what she looks like. And this is clearly an image of her in her humanoid form. So, in 3rd edition, we learn a little bit about this humanoid form. This foul demoness resembles a human only from the torso up. This portion of her body is composed of thick, rancid sheets and coils of fungus that just happens to have grown into the shape of what would otherwise be an attractive woman. 4 fibrous antlers grow from her brow, and her hands bear cruel talons. Her lower torso is a coiling pillar of lashing, ropey tentacles and other fungus growths. Her skin is a nauseating swirl of grays, blues, purples, and blacks. So yeah, just not very appealing at all. And then in 5th edition of her appearance, we learn this. Utterly inhuman, Zuggtmoy can mold her fungoid form into an approximation of a humanoid shape, including the skeletal thin figure depicted in grimoires and ancient art, draped and veiled in mycelium and lichen. Alright, so now we are going to take a little bit look at the lore, and here is an image of Zuggtmoy from 5th edition. So this is how she is depicted in the 5e adventure Out of the Abyss, where she plays an important role in that campaign. All right, so from 5th edition, we learn this about Zuggtmoy's lore. Her cultists often follow her unwittingly. Most are fungi infected to some degree, whether through inhaling her mind-controlling spores or being transformed to the point where flesh and fungus become one. Such cultists are fungal extensions of the Demon Queen's will. Their devotion might begin with the seemingly harmless promises offered by exotic spores and mushrooms, but quickly consumes them body and soul. Alright, so that's what we learn about her in 5th edition. Now, in 3rd edition, we learn of more immediate concern to Zuggtmoy is Jubilex, who shares her realm. The 2 demon lords have long warred for dominance over Shadakla, with Zuggtmoy traditionally holding control over its surface and Jubilex being forced to lurk in the deepest caverns below. Now, this is getting to the fact that both Zuggtmoy and Jubilex are considered rulers of the 222nd plane of the Abyss, a plane otherwise known as Shadakla. And the fact that they always vie for control. And it's a single layer of the Abyss, but it has like an upper and lower section. And the upper section is generally where the fungi exist. The lower section is where the oozes exist, so that's why you have Zuggtmoy on one layer, Jubilex on the other. But they both want to ultimately control the whole thing. So when Zuggtmoy goes into the Ascendancy, she usually expands her fungi down into the lower parts of Jubilex, or the 222nd plane. And when Jubilex goes into the Ascendancy, he will expand his oozes into the upper area. Alright, and then in first edition we learned that in her natural form, Zuggtmoy is able to move rapidly despite her bulk, and she can walk on walls or even inverted, such as on ceilings, although such modes of movement reduce her maximum rate. So she's got something of the spider climb ability, which makes use of those suckered feet on those legs that they talked about in her description from first edition. Alright, now as you would probably expect, as somebody who is considered a ruler in the Abyss, her creature type is a fiend. Fiends are creatures of wickedness that are native to the lower planes. A few are the servants of deities, but many more labor under the leadership of archdevils and demon princes. Evil priests and mages sometimes summon fiends to the material world to do their bidding. If an evil celestial is a rarity, a good fiend is almost inconceivable. It's almost inconceivable! What was the name of that character from Princess Bride? The little guy that always ran around with Andre the Giant. Okay, so fiends include demons, devils, hellhounds, rakshasas, and yugalas. Okay, and then a quick primer: the Abyss is the abode of the demons. Demons are chaotic evil. And then the 9 hells are the abode of the devils, and the devils are lawful evil. So if you want to think of the difference between those two, you can think of lawful evil as sort of tyrannical. They are like the evil incorporated, if you will. So they're the bureaucratic, everything has a rule, and all the rules are made to punish people or punish creatures for anything they do that steps out of line of the rules. And a lot of those rules are paradoxical, so that no matter what you do, you're breaking a rule and you're going to get punished. And then the demons are chaotic evil, and chaotic evil, that's always more like, let's just mess stuff up for the sake of messing stuff up. So those would be like your batshit crazy terrorist type people. Those are chaotic evil, because they really don't have any kind of agenda other than just causing destruction and mayhem, and all they care about is killing people, and any kind of excuse they can attach to that is good enough for them. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at the mechanical features of Zuggtmoy in her various incarnations. So let's go and take a look at the first place she appears, the earliest place that I could find that she appears in D&D. And this is something that, alright, all you guys watching, you can't say anything to my Saturday night players, because this might give something away. Saturday night players definitely cannot know anything about this, but Zuggtmoy is probably the big bad boss monster that you find at the bottom of the Temple of Elemental Evil adventure. And I say you can't tell my Saturday night players about that, because we're going through the Temple of Elemental Evil right now. Zuggtmoy, she has an armor class of 0 for her body or -2 for her head. Very hard to hit. She can move 150 feet per round or 60 feet per round on walls and ceilings in her natural form, or she can move 120 feet per round in human form. She has 49 hit dice, and keep in mind that in 222 hit points, you go, okay, that sounds kind of weak compared to 5e. But keep in mind that while characters were allowed to go to 36th level, they only earned hit dice up through 10th level. And after 10th level, they would only get 1 or 2 hit points every level. So if you got super lucky on your rolls as like a fighter or something, by 10th level you might have 100 hit points. With Constitution bonus, maybe you have another 20 hit points. But then after 10th level, that con bonus goes away. And so you would get, between 10th and 36th level, you would get, okay, so that's 26 levels, you'd only get 52 more hit points, period. So something with 222 hit points would be extremely tough compared to even a very, very high level character that would have essentially 10 hit dice and then another 50-60 hit points at most on top of that. Also notice that she not only has mechanical attacks and spell attacks, but she also has psionic ability. So she is very, very tough and capable as a combatant. She's able to use the following spell-like powers at will. So anti-plant shell, astral spell, charm plants, continual darkness, detect good, detect magic, and entangle, fear at a 15-foot radius, improved invisibility, hold plant, levitate, locate plants, plant door, plant growth, pass plant, pollute food and drink, programmed illusion, read languages, read magic, silence 15-foot radius, snare, speak with plants, telekinesis, at 1,000 pounds of weight, so she can throw around an object up to 1,000 pounds. They measured the weight in gold pieces back in those days, and 10 gold pieces is a pound, so that's why I say it's 1,000 pounds of weight. Tongues, transport via plants, and trip. She can become ethereal twice per day, and use each of the following once per day: limited wish, gate, and summon fungi. And her gate spells can be attempted once per round, but will succeed only once daily. So she can bring in type 1 demons, type 2 demons, type 3 demons, or a babu. And that's all based on a random die roll. She uses summon fungi, and then she can bring in all of these particular types of fungi. So she's got a ton of minions, basically. Whenever you fight her, she's not going to be found alone. She's going to throw all those minions at you while she is casting spells and using her spell-like abilities. And remember, those spells she can use at will. So it's not like she's going to run out of spells to cast at you. She's just going to keep casting them. And she's going to figure out what will work, and will try to keep using that to the best of her ability against you. So it makes her an extremely tough opponent indeed. I'm not going to say too much about it because I don't want them to know, if any of them do watch this, I don't want them to know where they're going to find her and what type of environment she's in until they actually get there, and then it'll be too late. Alright, so in none of the source books that I have for 2nd edition feature Zuggtmoy, and I thought that was a little bit strange because I do have a lot of the source books for 2nd edition, the monster source books that talk about the creatures from the abyss and from the 9 hells. And it could just be that it's published in some other resource, or maybe in one of the adventures, or in one of the annual expansions that I just don't have from 2nd edition. Alright, so Zuggtmoy in 3rd edition, she's a CR 21 monster, armor class 41, 429 hit points. She's got damage resist 20, so that means you have to deal at least 21 points of damage to her for her to take any. The exceptions to that is if you hit her with cold iron weapons, or if you have a good aligned attack, which can be certain. In 3rd edition, there were certain magical attacks and certain classes and spells and features and things like that that would confer like basically good or evil to attacks, whether they would be melee attacks, weapon attacks, range attacks, or spell attacks. So she resists cold 10, fire 10, spell resistance 32, so 32% of the time any spell you cast at her is just going to be completely ignored. She is a little bit clumsier and slower. She can only move 20 feet per round and climb 20 feet per round. Attacks with 4 pseudopods with a plus 30 on her attack roll for 2d6 plus 10 damage each, and 2 claws plus 25 on the attack roll for 1d6 plus 5 damage each. And then her spell-like abilities: at will, astral projection, contagion, desecrate, detect good, detect law, fly, greater dispel, magic, greater teleport, telekinesis, unhallow, unholy blight, and wall of thorns. 3 times per day she can do quicken contagion, polymorph any object into fungi only or symbol of death, and once per day she can do an implosion. So polymorph any object, that includes people. So the big barbarian that's up there whacking on her and dealing a lot of damage, she just boop and turn him into fungi. Then she has, with her tentacle, she can do a constriction attack. She can do an engulf attack, where once she has somebody constricted, she can basically pull it into her body and absorb, and then each round the fungal enzymes eat away at the engulfed victim and deal 1d6 points of constitution drain per round. So yeah, it's not hit point damage, it's draining constitution, and of course as soon as you hit 0 constitution you're dead. Has an improved grab ability, summon fungi, summon Tanari, which is another demon type, and plant traits. So she gets those plant traits. Surrogate, she constantly infiltrates the surrounding earth, wood, and stonework with a network of spore-laden filaments. Invisible to a radius of 60 feet, and once per round she can transport herself instantaneously to any point in this radius, as though by dimension door. I'm sorry, Spore Gate, not Surrogate. Spore Gate. So she can hop all around the battlefield, and get herself to a more advantageous position, either away from a dangerous attacker or close to somebody that she wants to attack. So, yeah, she's a very, very, very bad and horrible and mean lady. Alright, and now in 5th edition, the current edition, Zuggtmoy, as I said, she first appeared in 5e in... hey, Glorious Zote, welcome. Glad you could join us tonight. In 5th edition, Zuggtmoy appeared for the first time in the Out of the Abyss adventure, but she's also more recently appeared in Candlekeep Mysteries. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later in the show. In this edition, she has an armor class of 18, 304 hit points, speed of 30 feet, and she can resist cold, fire, lightning, immune to poison, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. So it's not just resistant to non-magical, it's completely immune to non-magical attacks. So if you don't have a magic weapon, don't even try to hit her. Condition immunities, charmed, exhausted, frightened, poisoned. She's got true sight out to 120 feet. She knows all languages, and she can communicate via telepathy out to a distance of 120 feet. Innate spell casting, detect magic, locate animals or plants, ray of sickness at will, and then 3 times per day dispel magic, snaring strike, entangle, plant growth, and once per day etherealness, teleport. She's got 3 legendary resistances per day, so if she fails a saving throw, she can choose to succeed instead. Resistance to magic, advantage on saving throws, and then magic weapons. Her weapon attacks are considered magical. And she makes 4 pseudopod attacks at a plus 13 to hit, and 2d8 plus 6 bludgeoning damage, and 2d8 poison damage for each of those strikes. Then she's got this nasty little infestation spore that she can do 3 times per day. She releases a cloud of spores in a 20-foot radius sphere centered on her, and they linger for a minute. And any flesh and blood creature in the cloud when it appears or that enters later needs to make a DC 19 con save. On a failed save, they're infected with a disease called the Spores of Zuggtmoy and gain a random form of madness, determined by rolling on the Madness of Zuggtmoy table that lasts until the creature is cured of the disease or dies. While infected, they can't be reinfected and must repeat the saving throw at the end of every 24 hours. So you don't get saving throws every turn, you only get a saving throw every 24 hours. And your body is slowly taken over by fungal growth, and after 3 failed saves, the creature dies and is reanimated as a spore servant if it's a type of creature that can be. So basically, it turns you into a walking, moving, animated mushroom with those spores over the course of 3 days. So that's kind of an awful, awful, awful fate. Then what's probably just as frightening and even more dangerous to your allies is the mind control spores. So she releases spores in a cloud, 20-foot radius centered on her. Humanoids and beasts, when the cloud appears or that enter later, make a wisdom save. On a failed save, it's infected with a disease called the influence of Zuggtmoy. While infected, the creature is charmed and can't be reinfected. So, why is that important? Well, because one of her reactions is any creature that she has charmed must use its reaction to get in the way of any attacks that Zuggtmoy chooses to put them in front of. And then she also, as a ruler of the Abyss, one of the levels of the Abyss, she has legendary actions. So she can take up to 3 legendary actions, one at a time, and uses one of those at the end of another creature's turn during the round. So she can either make an additional pseudopod attack, or she can exert her will. So one creature charmed by Zuggtmoy that she can see must use its reaction to move up to its speed as she directs, or make a weapon attack against a target that she designates. So that's why all those spores are really bad. You send all of your real tough guys up to fight Zuggtmoy in melee. She poofs these spores out all over them, and if they have low wisdoms, which a lot of fighter types and a lot of barbarian types, maybe wisdom is their dump stat, and so they have a hard time making those wisdom saves. Then all of a sudden she starts sending them back and attacking the rest of the party on at the end of other people's turns. She does that, not just on her turn, but at the end of other people's turns. So she has ways of clearing out the battlefield very, very, very quickly. So that is Zuggtmoy in 5th edition. Now, she originally appeared in Out of the Abyss in that chapter called The Fetid Wedding, where she was one of the powers ejected from the Abyss by Lolth through this ritual that was being cast by one of her followers. And she took up residence in one of these cities and started basically taking the city over as a fungus. And then she decided to get married to one of the leaders of the city who called himself the Pudding King. So it's like a very weird type of thing where you have just sort of a strange mixture of Zuggtmoy's lore and Jubilex's lore all sort of smashed together there in that part of it, and it's just like oozes and plant monsters and fungi monsters all in the same place. Ugh, it just kind of makes your skin crawl when you think about it too much. Alright, we're going to come back to talking a little bit about where she appeared elsewhere in a few minutes, but for now we're going to go back over here and talk a little bit about using Zuggtmoy in encounters and what to do if you have to fight her. Alright, Zuggtmoy, as we said, she's a CR23 monster, so right now, officially, there are 4 tiers of play in 5th edition, which top out at level 20. They've already announced that, there's like 5.5 edition is coming in the next couple of years. I suspect that's going to be when we start to see what they consider their mythic tier. And I believe it's going to be called mythic tier because you started to see some creatures that now have mythic actions, which are not legendary actions. It's above and beyond legendary actions. So I think the tier of play that's going to be 21 and beyond, I believe that's probably going to be called mythic tier. I could be wrong, but that's just my guess. So that is right now, if you have a very, very high level party, you can throw Zuggtmoy at them, and she's going to be enough of a challenge all by herself. You don't need to add anything to that, and if you throw her at a party of level 18 or below, she's automatically a deadly encounter, and you run the risk of a TPK. by putting her up against a party that's too much lower than 19th level. And that, of course, depends table by table. It depends on how many of her abilities you use as a DM, depends on how cohesive your players are, and how well they work together, and what kind of synergy they have in their abilities and stuff like that. You probably have parties of level 15 characters that could survive and defeat Zuggtmoy if they have, if they work really well together, even if you as a DM are trying to use all of her abilities to the maximum extent. Alright, now if you are a player and your DM does throw Zuggtmoy at you, and this applies only to her 5th edition iteration. So this is, I never worry about going back and trying to account for, well, what if you fight a 3rd edition or a 1st edition version of the monster, because that just gets too complicated. But in 5th edition, you want to fight from range. So if you really, really must fight her, you need to watch for those clouds of spores that can poison you or control the minds of her enemies. And then watch out for her thralls. So Zuggtmoy's spores can affect humanoids, beasts, and because of her affinity with magic, she can control other plant monsters and fungi. So it's likely that an army of fungus-infested thralls will attack you as well as she does, many of them likely spreading dangerous spores of their own. And then she's, of course, a living legend. Zuggtmoy has both legendary resistance and legendary reactions, or legendary actions, I should say, that she will use to try to tilt the battle in her favor. And she didn't rise to become the ruler of the Abyss by being a pushover. So you always have to watch out for her anytime you get in combat with her. She is a very, very, very bad lady. Alright. Tactics for using Zuggtmoy as a DM. So if you're behind the screen, and if you decide that you need to deploy Zuggtmoy, or if Zuggtmoy is there, and the characters insist on going forth and facing her, what are you going to do? Okay, you've probably warned them, but your players have decided they need to go toe-to-toe with a ruler from the Abyss. Hopefully, they enjoy rolling up new characters. So, as a DM, always remember Zuggtmoy is a killer and a genius, and she's completely insane. She will have infected all kinds of nearby monsters with her spores, and she will use her legendary actions to have them attack the PCs. She'll also use her protective thrall feature as a reaction to have a charmed creature attack whomever has attacked her, or to jump in front of an attack that's coming at her. And meanwhile, Zuggtmoy will fill the air with spores that will either poison or control the minds of anyone foolish enough to attack her. And those recharge every time she rolls a 5 or a 6 at the top of her turn. So she can move somewhere, put a big cloud of spores up, and they linger for a full minute. So she can just move around the battlefield and just put all kinds of big clouds of these spores out, and pretty soon everywhere you go you're going to have to make saving throws because you're moving into a new cloud of spores. Alright, be relentless with a monster like Zuggtmoy. Throw the abilities that hit the hardest at the party first, and then keep smashing them with the biggest attacks possible on every turn and by using every legendary action. So remember, as long as the party is not facing Zuggtmoy on her home plane of Shadakla in the Abyss, she has no fear of death. Destroying her avatar merely means that she reforms in the Abyss, and to make matters worse, she's going to add a new set of names to her hit list. Oh. You beat me on the material plane. Okay. Alright. I remember who you are. I got a lot of fungi monsters with your names on them. So she is definitely someone that even for a super high level party, defeating her is only a temporary victory. Unless they're crazy enough, foolish enough, courageous enough, quite frankly, have enough resources to go into the abyss itself and fight her on her home turf. But there's so many other things they'd have to deal with, including all of Jubilex's ooze monsters and all of his minions on that same plane of the abyss. That, yeah, it would just be nuts trying to deal with her there. So more than likely, they're never going to get a chance to actually kill her. Destroy her avatar, yes, but that has its own special set of repercussions for those characters. Alright, so where would you place Zuggtmoy in a campaign? So, as a demon lord from the Abyss, Zuggtmoy would have to be a major campaign boss. So out of the Abyss, she's portrayed as having turned an entire city in the Underdark into her lair in the Fetid Wedding. If left unchecked, seems likely her spores will carry her fungi throughout the entire Underdark, filling it with fungal monsters and her own brand of rot and decay. And then we see the adventure Xanthoria from Candlekeep Mysteries. In that particular adventure, she serves as the inspiration for a mad druid who turns herself into something called a lichen lich, which is a druid becoming a lich that is literally infused with the fungal corruption of Zuggtmoy. And the unique thing about that adventure is that the Lichen Lich, which is a new monster for D&D 5e that appears in that Candlekeep Mysteries adventure, she has found a way to have a living creature, this being a fey creature, a sprite, that acts as her phylactery. And while this sprite is acting as her phylactery, she's immune to all attacks, magical and non-magical, spell-like and weapon. So basically, this is a druid that has an immortal, living, breathing, moving phylactery that can't be hurt. And literally, according to that particular adventure, the only way that you can defeat that particular living phylactery is to have her willingly give up her own life. And so it's like the best you can do is roll some persuasion checks. And you can't fight it, you can't smash it, you can't destroy it. You just gotta rely on rolling some good persuasion checks and seeing if that will actually do it. If you succeed, well, she will give up her life, and the phylactery then is destroyed, so that when you kill the lich is ultimately destroyed. However, if you fail, the sprite just goes invisible and teleports away to some other part of Faerun. And then after you defeat the lich, a few days later, she pops up next to this sprite again. And she continues her mayhem somewhere else. So, it's a very interesting creature, this Lichen Lich is. And almost as hard to kill as Zuggtmoy herself. Alright, and then if we go way back to first edition, Zuggtmoy is in the Temple of... Oh, yep, that's right, I can't talk about that. So, we won't mention any more about that because of my Saturday night game that I have going. All right. Now, reskinning Zuggtmoy. Now, normally when we talk about monsters that are not named, rulers of some sort of plane or a level of a plane, we talk about how you can take the stat block, put a new skin over it, change some of the abilities around, and come up with a completely unique monster. But that's not what we're going to do with Zuggtmoy. What we're going to do with Zuggtmoy is we're going to look at the mechanics of how Zuggtmoy works instead of trying to reskin her. So if we strip away all the trappings, she is very deeply enmeshed in the fungal decay that her layer of the abyss represents. So studying this can help us think of a way to pivot that kind of symbiotic relationship to some other sort of ultra powerful, capstone boss that your party might face in a homebrew campaign. So let's imagine a forest demon that, instead of using fungi, uses flowering plants, pollen, and vines in similar way that Zuggtmoy uses fungi and spores. So that would be one way of doing that. So you can take a lot of the same abilities, reflavor them. Instead of being caused by fungi spores, they'd be caused by the pollen that gets shot out from flowers. You could change the appearance so that she looks like she's straight out of the Rose Bowl parade, where she's all made up of different kinds of flowers, and she might be very colorful, and she might even look very attractive that way because of the whole riot of colors and everything. But she could be very, very deadly. Or he, doesn't have to be a she. And then another thing that we could think about is we could think about some kind of aquatic demon that has the same kind of relationship with kelp and corals and jellyfishes that Zuggtmoy has with her fungi and her spores. So, if you have an aquatic campaign, the capstone monster might be some sort of demon that lurks deep under the ocean, and there's this whole kelp forest that comes alive and reaches out and attacks the party, and then maybe like the corals will or the jellyfishes will eject clouds of ink or whatever it is, little spores that go through the water and will infect creatures that are in there, whether they are using some kind of breathing apparatus or they're trying to have magical breathing, or if they have gills because they've imbibed a potion of water breathing or something like that. So then the other things to consider with monsters like those is what would the goals of those monsters be, and how would they fit into your overall campaign. So, and then if you don't have something that would be in a forest or in the ocean, it probably wouldn't take a lot of effort to go through and think about, okay, how would I do this in some other kind of environment? Quite frankly, the ocean and the forest were the two that seemed the easiest to me. But somebody else looking at that may go, oh no, it would really be cool if we somehow did that in an icy area, and you had all these animated icicles that would attack people, and snow monsters that would just burst, and the little clouds of snow dust would carry basically the spore-like effects and those types of things. So you could do all kinds of stuff with that. All right, that's gonna do it for our look at Zuggtmoy. Let me see. Looking at the chat, and right now I don't see any questions in the chat. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the wrap up, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to look at the chat once again and see if there are any questions about tonight's monster. Alright, I have been DM Gallibond, and tonight's Monster Monday has been about Zuggtmoy. I have 3 other live streams that I do every week, and we are back on schedule this week, so all 4 of them should happen starting on Thursday evening. Normally the schedule is Walker of Waterdeep, which is a 5th edition planeswalking game, Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern. Right now they are in a plane that is inspired by the Magic the Gathering release of Arabian Nights, which is one of the old school expansions, back even before they were doing the blocks. It's like 1993 expansion, so it's one of the earliest expansions they ever did. And the mechanics of that world are largely based on a reskinning of the 2nd edition D&D Dark Sun setting. So it's if you like the old Magic the Gathering Arabian Nights setting and you think the Dark Sun mechanics are cool, come check out our show on Sundays, because for the next few sessions we are going to be adventuring there, and they're going to be dealing with all kinds of monsters and all kinds of spells and all kinds of artifacts and items and everything that come out of that particular Magic the Gathering expansion. Then on Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. we have the Sword Coast Chronicles. This is a 5th edition D&D game. And in the Sword Coast Chronicles, what we're doing is we're telling a homebrew story, but we're using the lens of the published 5th edition campaigns. And right now, they are in the storyline for Storm King Thunder, but as we speak, they are right in the middle of a battle with a boss monster from the Princes of the Apocalypse. They are actually on a flying castle with a cloud giant, and they are fighting against Yansi Bin, who is the Prince of Elemental Air. So that is going on in that Thursday night game. Then on Saturday evenings at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we have our Saturday Night Greyhawk game. Saturday Night Greyhawk is old school. We are playing 2nd edition rules, but right now we are playing through the original Temple of Elemental Evil adventure. So that's why when this particular monster came up, I was like, okay, well, came up in the rotation, so I'll go ahead and do it. But they don't want to give too much away about the 1st edition abilities, because Zuggtmoy, her abilities are being translated to 2nd edition for my game, but she is somebody that they're going to have to deal with eventually in that game. Now, all of the live streams that we have, you can follow them both on Twitch or on YouTube, and all the archives of the live streams are over on YouTube. I also have a Patreon, and the Patreon, I've recently started adding more content to the Patreon. It's not behind a paywall, but this is these are the raw videos that I am making specifically for YouTube, and it is the content before I do any editing. So basically it's got all of the content we're talking about, but it doesn't have all the graphics yet and the transitions, and it hasn't been edited down to get rid of all the places where I mess up and have to start over and all that kind of stuff. So that's over on the Patreon. Basically, it's there because I've gotten so behind on doing the editing for those videos that I just figured I need to get them up, and then when I get them edited, I will put them in the proper playlist where they should appear over on the YouTube archives. All right, and next week we are going to be taking a look at the Frost Giant. That will be our Monster of the Week on Monster Monday next time. Okay, so let me go back and take a look. All right, I don't see any questions. So I am going to go on over here. I'm going to bring us to our ending credits. And then I am going to go out to Twitch and see if I can find anybody who is streaming some D&D on Twitch. And we'll go ahead and we will raid them. So let's see about that.